Thanks. So, there's something I needed to talk to you about. This is hard for me. But it's not working out the way I wanted it to. Between us. It's not. I work really, really hard all month long in order to get more of you. And then it feels like when you come home, it's like there's a million other places you gotta be. And that's not the only reason. I think communication is a problem in our relationship. Half the time I don't understand where you're coming from with all your acronyms like APY, GDP, FDIC. And I'm just gonna ask it, who's Roth?
Welcome to Washington Heights today at the 11 o'clock service. And here's what we're going to talk about today. We all have some kind of relationship with our money, with our stuff in our lives. And we're in a series that is making our way through the book of Proverbs, where we're tracing those themes and trying to understand what is it like to actually live like a wise person. And it's really important that we understand that we're targeting and aiming at wisdom, because sometimes what we do with our faith is we don't think about what is the wise thing to do, what is the thing that honors God instead. And maybe you caught this at the beginning of Jaden's story up there. He said we kind of give our lives to God, but we just kind of make it an addition. And when we do that, maybe we look for the lines and the rules instead of looking beyond that at something much deeper than that, and that is wisdom. And just before we look at that today, I just want to invite you, as we do every week, if today's your first day, can I invite you to do something as soon as the service is over? My wife and I will be just off the platform there. We would love to spend just a couple minutes with you, just welcoming you here and just getting to know a little bit about you. So today we're going to talk about money. And if you think this is rough, next week we're going to talk about sex and sexuality. Oh boy. So bring your popcorn next week. But today we're going to talk about money, and we're going to see what Proverbs has to say about wisdom with money. How do we get it right on the money? So let me ask you this question. Can money buy happiness? There are a couple yeses, mostly no. Johnny Depp was quoted as saying, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a yacht, which means you can sail up right next to it. Now, I think that's an interesting perspective from somebody, maybe who knows. But we often kind of come to the conclusion that money, especially when it comes to the Bible, is a really negative sort of thing. But I got a little bit of a surprise for you. But first, I want to talk to you about this. I think in the arena of faith, we think that it's about checking boxes sometimes, and about where the rules are and the lines are and making sure we're right up against that. What if it's something so much deeper? What if there needs to be a paradigm shift that allows us to see that it goes way deeper than just checking a box and doing the right thing, or maybe even the legal thing? A way maybe to illustrate that, back in 1999, a movie came out. So many movies and so many things in our culture are so similar to each other, but every once in a while there's something so original, and this was one of those moments. It was a movie called The Matrix in 1999. How many people in this room were not alive in 1999? Can I say, that's way too many for my liking there. And if you haven't seen that yet and you watch it as a result maybe of this, and the graphics and the special effects back in that day was like mind-blowing and all of that, and today it's going to look really hokey in light of what we have now. But here's the thing about The Matrix, and the only reason I bring this up. There's a guy named Neo, and Neo is just living his life, and he gets up and he goes to work and he does his thing and he comes home and he goes to sleep and he gets up the next day and he goes to work and does his thing, and it just happens over and over again. Well, then Neo meets a guy named Morpheus. And Morpheus offers Neo this choice. You can take this blue pill, and if you take the blue pill, you know what? Pretty much your life is just going to go on as normal. And you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll do the same thing and come home and go to sleep and wake up and do the same thing. But if you take the red pill, everything changes. And it is going to be a whole different world in which you live. And the life that you knew it is no longer going to exist. It's going to be an entirely different kind of life. And any of you that have seen the movie, do you know which pill he took? Yeah, he took the red pill, because if he took the blue pill, it'd be a really short movie, about 5 minutes, and there wouldn't be anything there for us to learn. But he takes the red pill, and all of a sudden, everything changes, and he sees this different perspective on life altogether. And not only does he discover a different life, it's more like he discovers reality and lives life in reality and discovers more of the purpose for which he was put here. And so as we come to this whole idea of wisdom about money, Proverbs is going to help us to get right on the money. And it could be that what we need is a whole paradigm shift that takes us away from just checking boxes and what is the right thing to do, to getting something so much deeper and more profound, and that is, how do we honor God with our money, with our finances? Now, here's my guess. Proverbs, when we come to the Bible, my guess is most people would, say this, that, just like I asked the question, can money buy happiness? If I ask you, what does the Bible say about money? My guess is most people would go, oh, the Bible's down on that. Doesn't the Bible say that money is the root of all evil? No, Pink Floyd sang that, and others have misquoted that along the way. But what the Bible actually says is that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that is a huge difference between those two things. Would it surprise you if the first thing that Proverbs says about money is positive, that it's good? Because it does. Let me show you that. Proverbs teaches us that money can bless. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And it talks about sometimes hard work and building wealth are actually pictured as good things and things that are gifts on the other side of the generous hand of God. Here's another example. The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it. And when you look in the Bible, sometimes we think, well, spiritual things are good and material things in this world are bad, intrinsically, inherently bad in and of themselves. That's not the truth. You go all the way back to the creation, the book of Genesis, when God is making the world. He makes the universe. He makes the world in which we live in. He makes you and me. And when he makes all those things back in the book of Genesis, after each of those days and all that made it up, do you know what he pronounced it? Good. He pronounced it good. Now, it's fallen, and it's not what God created at the very beginning. But the stuff that God made is actually good. Here's a verse in the New Testament. It says that God made everything for our enjoyment. The stuff that makes up our lives, you know what we should do with it? Enjoy it, because that's why God gave it to us. But here's where the problem comes in. We take something that was made for enjoyment, something that God pronounced good, and you know what we turn it into? God. We take a good thing, we make it a God thing. We make it to really deliver the ultimate things that only God can deliver, and that's when things get a little bit squirrely. But maybe today, after church, you're going to go out and you're going to get lunch together. You know what you should do? Enjoy it. And tip really well, too, while you're there, because God has given, all of us so much. But the first thing that Proverbs has to say about money is that it can bless. It can be used for good. And sometimes we have this preconceived ideas that the Bible is going to go negative on all of that. There's dangers along with it. But money and our finances, it's just a thing. It's a thing like the old illustration is fire, right? Fire is a thing. You can use it to warm yourself. You can use it to burn something down and maybe hurt somebody. It all depends on how you use it. It's just a thing. And one of the ways in which we can use it is to bless. But there are some dangers that come along with it, because Proverbs also teaches that it can corrupt our integrity, that there's a pull and a draw that comes along with it. The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. Couple pictures going on here. There's a scale there, not the kind that we get on in the morning to see, what we might weigh. These are ancient scales, and they go something like this, and I was going to do this, but that's 6, 7 in this day. And there's actually, though I think the kind of scales we're talking about, there's, on one side you can put an amount, and then you put the equal amount, and it kind of balances out after a while. That's the kind of scales they had when this was being written. And here's what Proverbs is telling us, that if you go to the market and you want to buy a pound of wheat, and so you say, I'd like to buy a pound of wheat. Okay, they take their 1 pound rock and put it on one side. The scale goes way down like this. And then they're supposed to put 1 pound of wheat. And when it evens out, there you go. You got 1 pound. But here's what you've done. Here's what a dishonest scale means. It's not quite 1 pound. It's not so obvious that you can't tell that it's 1 pound, because it's close, but it's not exact. And you know it. And so somebody is buying not 1 pound of wheat, but they're buying, a little bit less than that, maybe a little bit more than 3/4, not so obvious that you can tell, but you did that with some forethought. And so the picture here is of people who, especially in a business context, withhold certain information for the sake of their own benefit and profit. That's what God detests. And by the way, you see the word detest, that's a really strong word. It's used in the Bible in just a couple different contexts. One is in the context of idolatry. What is idolatry? When we bow down and we worship, maybe not physically, but with our lives, we worship something or someone other than God. It's also used in the context of sexual immorality and in many forms in which that plays out. And then you find it here with this. And so there is a temptation for the sake of profit or personal gain that we can corrupt our integrity and surrender some of that for the sake of personal gain. And the Bible says we need to be careful. There's a danger that comes along with it, and it can draw us in and lead us to hide information for our own sake. It can also fuel consumerism, personal gain. Once again, people curse the one who hoards grain, but they pray God's blessing on the one who is willing to sell. And so imagine if you have a harvest of grain, but all of a sudden times are tough and people are hurting, and you know that you could sell that, but if you hold on to it longer and conditions get even harder, you'll even have more profit that comes as a result of it. But meanwhile, people are suffering. And people are hurting, but you're holding that back. And this to me is such a great example of one of the ways in which the Bible says, look, it's not always just about finding the rules. We may say, well, is that illegal to do that? No, it's not illegal. It just doesn't honor God because it's not seeing a bigger picture of the people who are around us. And so there is this pull that can lead us to think about personal gain rather than the people around us, especially those who are going through a difficult time. The wages of the righteous is life, but the earnings of the wicked are sin and death. Do you see the contrast between the two? Again, money is just a thing, and it can be used for life and benefit of the people around us. It can also facilitate some death and some difficulty on the other side of it. This slave trade that was the plague of the world for so long, what was the bottom line motivating drive of all of that? It was just simply personal gain. To take people and to sell them into a life of slavery was just all about profit. And do you know what was one of the things that was working against the effort to do away with slavery? People said things like this: our coffee, our tea, and our sugar are going to become more expensive. And when the movement that was born out of something called the Great Awakening and people who loved the God of the Bible really moved in that direction to do away with slavery, you know what the result was? They were right. And for an entire generation, it was a little bit more costly to live in that, but there were people who said there's a bigger picture at play here, and we can either bring life or we can bring death. But what do we want to be a part of? Proverbs also teaches us that money can make me short-sighted. that I lose the bigger picture. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The day of wrath is talking about a judgment day. And yeah, judgment's a real thing. There's a judgment day coming. And sometimes if I'm focused on me, myself, and I, and getting ahead here and now, I can lose sight of that bigger picture that there is another day coming. And day of wrath kind of questions may go something like this. Is my life part of something that truly brings value in this world? Is it something that benefits the people and promotes life and well-being around me? Or is it something that has turned inward and focused almost entirely on myself? Proverbs also teaches us that money can make me proud. There's one verse in particular, Proverbs 38, and the one that follows. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Give me enough for today. 1,000 years later, along comes somebody named Jesus, and one day he was teaching us how to pray, and he said, give us today our, what? Daily bread, right? It's the same idea. Give me enough. But look at what it says next when we have more than enough. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you, talking to God, and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. And would you say that we live in a world where we have more than our daily bread? I think that's a pretty accurate read. And the temptation in those moments is to go, who is the Lord? And by the way, that question that you see up there in yellow, that's not the first time it appears in the Bible. It was said first by a guy whose name and really his title was Pharaoh. He was a leader over a nation called Egypt that had enslaved the Hebrew people. God sends Moses down to give this message, set my people free. Pharaoh's response, who is the Lord? Because he is large and in charge, and I don't need God, and I don't even, know who that is and what that means to me, because he had so much at his disposal. Sometimes we're not the leader of nations anytime, but sometimes our success can lead us in the direction of overconfidence in our intelligence, our capabilities, our savvy, whatever that may look like, and it can lead us in the direction of becoming more and more proud about what we have accumulated. Bernard of Clairvaux, this is from a few hundred years ago, to see a man humble under prosperity is the greatest rarity in the world. That prosperity and humility don't often seem to go together really well. And so how is it that pride and humility, and we already talked about that, pursue a path of humility in weeks gone by. Why is it that we so often are drawn in the direction of pride? And we see it maybe so much wrapped around our finances and the things that make up our lives. We go wrong on the money when we live like it brings ultimate significance, satisfaction, and security. When we look to that to provide the things that only God can deliver, is it possible for me to confuse my identity with my income? That if my income goes up, I must be something. And maybe it allows me to get a better wardrobe, and I'm not just wearing better clothes, I can conclude I'm just better. Or maybe I get a better house. It's not just a nicer house to enjoy, it is being better than people who don't have the same thing that I do. And so sometimes we look to our finances or to our stuff to deliver a sense of significance. And how about satisfaction? We can live under this illusion that, hey, if I, create a pile of stuff that's large enough, I'll never want for anything ever again. I'll never need any more. A generation ago, a guy by the name of Howard Hughes was the wealthiest man alive, and he was asked in an interview one day this question, as if he could give us the ultimate answer for it. They asked him, how much is enough? And his answer is so profound. He said, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, beyond where I am. And we can also look to it for our security. We can think, well, if I have enough wealth, that'll keep me safe from whatever happens in this world. But I think we've seen economies can tank. We've seen pandemics arrive. We have seen, so many different ways in which what we thought was secure kind of dissipate or maybe, be reduced in dramatic kind of ways. So are we really safe? And yet there's that temptation to be pulled in that direction and to find our security and our significance and our satisfaction there. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city, but poverty is the ruin of the poor. And so this picture of the wealth of the fortified city, and we don't really have a picture to understand that in our day. You drive into a city, you just kind of enter in and you can exit back out. But back in the ancient world, it was a scary place to live. There were not police departments and law and order as we understand it, and court systems. It was, many times every man, woman, and child for themselves. So the people of means, the people with wealth, you know what they did? They built cities and built walls around them with some gates, and at night that would be closed and the people inside were safe. And that's where people of means lived. That looked something like this. This is an ancient city. This one's actually in Italy. And it kept all the dangers out. And Proverbs says, the wealth of the rich is their fortified city. That's where I will be safe. That's where I will discover life. And that's where I will be something, because only the rich could live in a city like that back in the day. Here's what Proverbs goes on to say, though. The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Here's what Proverbs says. It's easy to be drawn in the direction of finding significance and satisfaction and security in our stuff. But what you ultimately long for, and it's just the human experience, and sometimes we think, oh yeah, see, that person's wealthy, they just want more and more and more. We can be really poor and still want more and more and more, right? It's the same issue that can be running around any heart and life. But what this is telling us is that in ultimate sense, only God can deliver what your soul is longing for. And when we think about significance, think about this, that there is a God who said, you matter. You matter so much that Jesus left heaven and came to this earth and died for you. You matter. You talk about significance. You matter to the God of the universe. And you talk about satisfaction. What can truly bring sort of an end to that ongoing, never-ending hunger that the human heart may have running around it? And that is finding our ultimate fulfillment in the God who made us. And security, right? There's nothing we can amass that this world cannot take away in one way or another. We think we're safe and secure if we've accumulated a large pile of stuff, but it doesn't keep away illness and heartbreak and death. But ultimately, we are secure in the hand of God. He said, all those who belong to me, I will not lose one of them, that you are safe and secure with him. And so when we think about that fortified city, the wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. And we can so easily say, yeah, I sense this longing. And you know what? That's the human experience. And there's a relationship for which we were made. But we can turn our attention toward our stuff, toward our income. And we say, that's where it's found. And we take a good thing and make it a God thing. And it was never created to deliver ultimately what only God can. And as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about, why is it that we struggle so much with contentment? Why are we always, just hungry and moving forward and looking for more? And I discovered that contentment is on the other side of gratitude, and gratitude is on the other side of humility. And again, there's this whole idea of pride and what I do versus humility, which is knowing who I am, where I come from, and where I'm going. Mentioned in Genesis, God creating the world. And there's this picture that God bends down and comes near, and unlike all creation, he just spoke, but when it came to humanity, he formed the man out of the dust of the ground. And the word for dust in the Hebrew language is the word hamas. We get our word humility from that. And it seems like humility is tied to a recognition of where do we come from and where are we going? And that humility helps us to understand that there is this huge distinction between us and who God is. And yet he has reached down to us. And when you look at humility and you look at the life of Jesus, and we heard this even in the verses that Pastor Jimmy was reading up here, that he humbled himself, and the way of Jesus is down and down and down and down. Ultimately, God exalted him. And that's a challenge for us because we live in a culture that tells us, you know what the way forward is? Up and up and up and to the right. And those things just run counter to one another. And so we have a choice. And there is a lure and there is a temptation for us to move in the direction of finding ultimate things in temporary things. And only God can ultimately deliver what we truly long for. So if we're looking for significance or satisfaction or security, anytime those things just stir within our hearts and we desire them, I wonder if it can drive us in God's direction. But that's the paradigm shift that may need to happen, that when we think about what is beneath those longings of our heart, we are well served to understand the humility of where we come from and where we're going. Well, Jesus lived this out in his life, and there were encounters that he had that made this very real. And in the time that we have left, and really to wind this down, I want to do something in church today that we don't often do. I'm going to ask us to use our imagination. And to do that, I'm going to invite you to enter into a story. And it's from Luke chapter 7, and I'm going to kind of read through and narrate the story a little bit. And we're going to do it from two different perspectives because there are different people in this story. And I hope and I pray that as we put ourselves into the position of each of these two people, that it might change our lenses, it might change that paradigm. It might cause us to realize that Jesus did not come to give us a blue pill kind of experience in life where it's more of the same day after day after day. We just kind of tack on to the outside of it and make sure we're checking the boxes. That there would be an entire paradigm shift, and we realize all of life is an opportunity to honor God, and that it would flow freely from our lives. All the different ways to honor him, including our generosity. So, with that in mind, I'm going to invite you to use your imagination just a little bit and put yourself into this story. And I'm going to put a picture up here, and this is kind of a snapshot that's in the middle of this. So maybe you want to look at this. I might invite you to close your eyes. I promise it's not going to be weird or anything like that. We're going to be okay. But I really invite you to see it through these lenses. So you are a mover and a shaker in your town. You hear that Jesus is coming to town. And you have the courage to invite Jesus to your home for dinner. And you invite Jesus, and what do you know? He comes and he reclines at your table. Everything is going perfectly. Everyone you invited came. The food is perfect. The mood is just right. Everyone is full of expectation. But then suddenly a woman who has lived a very sinful life, who has also heard that Jesus is coming to your house, she just storms in. And she's dirty, literally, lice-infested kind of person, and everyone knows she has the worst reputation in town. Everyone is startled and uneasy. She's weeping and carrying a jar and just makes a beeline for Jesus, and she loses it. She just breaks down and she wets Jesus' feet with her tears. She wipes his feet, and then she breaks the jar open and pours perfume all over Jesus' feet, making a mess of everything. What a scene she makes. And when you see this and you see this woman, you say, if he was a prophet, he would know what kind of woman she is, a sinner. Jesus turns to you and he says, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, you answer. 2 people owed money to a lender. One owed 500 denarii and one owed 50. Neither had the money to pay him back. So he forgave the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? You respond, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. Jesus answered, "You have judged correctly." And then Jesus turns toward the woman, but then says back to you, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house, but you did not give me water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, since she entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. For whoever has been forgiven little loves little." And then Jesus turns toward her and says, "Your sins are forgiven." The other guests say among themselves, "Who is it that even forgives sins?" And Jesus says to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Now go in peace." Okay, that's story number one. And if you close your eyes, you can open them again. And that is one perspective in the room. But there's another, and this time I'm going to invite you to see it through the eyes and through the lens of the woman in the story. And as we do that, I hope and pray that you see an entirely different perspective, a paradigm shift. So let me put this picture up, and maybe you want to stare at that, or maybe you want to close your eyes once again. She is likely a prostitute, and her sin, whatever it is the worst that people could imagine. But as she goes into that home, she is going to walk into a room with people who she knows want to have absolutely nothing to do with her. But this time it's you. And you hear that Jesus is coming to town. And maybe you know him. And you know that he is able to forgive. And when one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to his house, Jesus comes, and so you make your way over. And as you look in, all the people around the table look perfectly together. They're all the movers and shakers of town. And there you are on the outside of the house. You debate yourself about staying where you are or going inside because you are the town's scandal. And you know that you will not be well received by all. But you decide to go for it, and you storm in holding the most precious thing you own. And you walk right toward Jesus while every eye in the room stares right at you and through you. And you lose it. You break down and the tears flow nonstop. You kneel and your tears make his feet wet. You wipe his feet with your hair. You kiss his feet and you take that precious item and you pour it out on his feet, and you hear a voice. If he was a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of person this is, a sinner. Your head is down, and then you hear Jesus' voice. "Simon, I have something to tell you." "Tell me, teacher," he says. "Two people owed money to a moneylender. One owed 500 denarii and one owed 50. Neither had the money to pay him back. So he forgave the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven." And you hear Jesus again. "You have judged correctly." Then Jesus turns toward you and says back to him, "Do you see this person? I came into your house, but you did not give me water for my feet, and this person wet my feet with their tears and wiped them with their hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this person, since they entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but this person poured out perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, their many sins have been forgiven, and their great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little." And then Jesus turns toward you and says, "Your sins are forgiven." The other guests say among themselves, "Who is it that even forgives sins?" Jesus says to you, "Your faith has saved you. Now go in peace." And if you close your eyes, you can open them again. It's a perspective change, a paradigm shift. And sometimes we come to faith and we think, where's the box and what do I need to check and what are the rules, as opposed to something so much deeper that comes out of a very real understanding of where we come from, who we are, and where we're going, and who God is and what he has done for us. And just like in her story, that generosity flows freely, not because it's a have to, because it's a recognition of what God has done. So here's what the book of Proverbs says, just in short form. Honor the Lord with your wealth. And my temptation might be, and there was a time I probably would have gone, okay, well, what's the rule and where's the line and all of this? And there's just something so much deeper happening. So here's what I think that means and how we can do that. We give first to God because that honors God. It's a recognition that we know it all comes from Him and that He is above all things, including me. So I give first, and I think it's easy, and I can think back to a time in my life, well, no, I'm going to do my life and the stuff that makes up my life, and then I'm going to try to set some aside and save, and then I'll kind of give out of what is left over. And it can be a paradigm shift to say, no, I'm going to give first because it honors God. And I'm going to save second. And Proverbs even talks about the wisdom of that. Saving second builds wealth, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's only when we look to that to give us the ultimate things that only God can give. And then I live on the rest. Because you know what that does? It fuels contentment. And contentment is on the other side of gratitude, and gratitude is on the other side of humility in a real recognition of where we come from, who we are, and where it's all going. So the next time we have this sense of longing in our heart, I wonder if maybe we could remember this. Jesus is the more your soul is longing for. And that when we have that sense of wanting more, that's not something that is just totally evil in and of itself. It's just a thing. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? Because that can lead us in the direction of using it to bless, of honoring God with every part of our life. There's some dangers that come along with it too. But we have this opportunity to be right on the money, which gives us one more opportunity to honor our great God. I'm going to invite you to stand together with me, and I'm going to pray, and we will be dismissed. So would you please stand with me? So God, thank you for your great generosity to us. God, as a nation, as a people, as individuals, God, we have received so much. And God, may we not feel a sense of shame about that. May we instead see a tremendous opportunity to honor you. And so God, lead us in that direction for your name's sake. And we pray that there would be so much gratitude in these hearts and lives of ours as we have an ongoing and deeper recognition of who you are and who we are in a relationship with you. And so God, make these hearts alive and give us more and more opportunities to just bless and honor you and bless and honor the people around us as well. We ask and pray this all in Jesus' powerful name. Amen.